Coming up, the champions have been crowned in North and South Dakota high school basketball, and now it's time to celebrate the top individual performers of the 2014-15 season.
We'll unveil our Varsity Sports honorees, which include our picks for Player of the Year in all 10 classes. Varsity Sports starts right now.
And hello and welcome to Varsity Sports alongside Jason Andera. I am Jay Elson. Well, this week we are going to highlight the best of the best as we honor the players that proved to be at the head of their respective classes.
Yeah, this time of the year especially, I'm reminded how much talent we have in the Dakotas after talking to all the coaches, watching all the highlights, scouring through all those stats. You just see how many great players we have living really close to us.
A lot of great players, but in a show like this, that can make for some headaches for you as
Where
far as
to draw the line. A lot of great players.
Exactly.
We're going to mention just a few of them.
Yes,
It'll
we
be
are.
good to give them some recognition.
Cover 4 classes in North Dakota, 6 classes in South Dakota. We're going to go through each and every one, starting with North Dakota Class A boys, Jason, and let's take a look at the guys at the head of the class here.
Well, here are just a few. Like we said, it's hard to pare this list down, but what jumps out at you is some of the great scorers we have in this class. Deshaun Eikens, he's a freshman. He came out of nowhere almost. 22 points per game, 9.5 boards. His talent level was obvious, but his competition level maybe not quite as much as some of these others you see on the list. Blaze Irwin doing that out on the east side of the state for Wahpeton all season long. Melvin Collins, maybe one of the most surprising players. We knew he was good, but 18.1 points per game, almost 10 boards a game. He really exceeded expectations. And then you talk about Dalton Feeney, a guy coming off of an injury, leading a team like Century to such a great season. And the one we have to talk about, Dakota Halverson, the point guard on this list. He just makes things happen.
And he is our Varsity Sports Player of the Year in North Dakota Class A boys basketball. Jason, what about Dakota sets him above the rest in this group?
Well, you look at this guy in a group of players, and he is hard to pick, as somebody who is set apart from the rest. He kind of blends in. He's not the tallest guy, but he might have the most heart, and he controls a game. When he dishes out one of his 4.5 assists per game, he's creating a bucket. Sometimes assists, you're just finding the open guy. He will find a way to create that opportunity to score for your team, and that's what makes him so good, and that's what made Minot so good this year.
And you need that point guard position to be an unselfish player. Certainly he qualifies in that regard. Very, very good player, and certainly ended that title drought for Minot this year in Class A hoops.
You bet. Great shooter, great everything.
Absolutely. All right, let's talk about the ladies now. Who stood out in North Dakota's biggest class on the girls' side?
Well, you see some of these great names here, and we'll start with a couple of the seniors on the list. Alexis Clabo of Davies had a tremendous season, 25.5 points per game while shooting 60% from the field, almost unheard of. Cassie Askvig, Lauren Rotunda, Sarah Jacobson, all juniors, and all putting up stellar seasons. And then Joden Josert, one of the best shooters that you'll see in this class. She always was seeing double teams on Century, still led them to quite a respectable season.
With all that said, it's Sarah Jacobson that gets the nod as the Varsity Sports Player of the Year, Class A girls basketball. I think if you were to have penciled one in ahead of the season, Sarah Jacobson certainly would have been one of the few that you would have been able to do that with.
Yeah, she won this award from Varsity Sports last year as a sophomore. She was obviously a front runner coming into this year as a junior. And how many adjectives can you use to describe what Sarah does on the court? Smart. She's intense. She makes everyone around her better. She scores at over 20 points per game, but almost more impressive is the 6.5 assists she can dish out throughout the game, because she sees all those double teams as a point guard. And somebody who can control the ball like that and play defense, I mean, really, you look up and down her stat sheet, there are no weaknesses. She can shoot the three, she can shoot the mid-range, she runs the break, she can rebound, she can do anything that you ask of her, and that's what made her and her team so good.
Yeah, and one number that stands out to me is 42% three-point shooting. I mean, that's tough to do, to ask a high school player to shoot that consistently from the perimeter, and Sarah has done it time in and time out.
And sometimes you'll see that high percentage, but they don't take that many shots. They just take the wide open ones.
She's a volume shooter.
She is not wide open, and she hit 51 threes this year.
Absolutely. Well, those are your Class A Players of the Year in North Dakota. And 2 down, 8 to go yet. South Dakota Players of the Year coming up a little bit later on. But up next, Brad Heidelbaum led the Rugby Panthers to their first state title since 1962, but was that enough to earn him our top award in Class B? Find out next.
Varsity Sports on Midco Sports Network is presented by AE Tech Electrical Training Center in Rapid City. Varsity Sports on Midco Sports Network is presented by Shields.
And welcome back. Well, Class B might have smaller schools, but as we well know, Jason, smaller does not necessarily mean shorter in terms of talent. There is plenty to go around in Class B boys basketball in the state of North Dakota. And let's start on the boys' side here. Impressive list of guys to consider.
Yeah, this group is really the head of the class. You see Brad Heidelbaugh, who won a state title for his team in rugby. You see Carter Kretschmann, the shooter. He's known as the shooter, but he can do a lot of things, as you can see by his stats there. Christian Vilvang of North Star had a tremendous season, is a great scorer from all over the court, including his great rebounding. Trayvon McKay, he maybe didn't save up his best game for the title game, but he meant so much to Four Winds all year, being a number one type team. And then Austin Lee out of Berthold. He was the reason that team was a top 5 team most of the year. 26.6 points per game. A tremendous player all around.
But when all the dust settled, Jason, who for you rose above the rest?
Well, it's not just for me. I think most of the state will agree. Brad Heidelbaugh was the best player, maybe not only in Class B, maybe in the entire state. He was the Gatorade Player of the Year in North Dakota for a reason. What makes this guy so good is he's a matchup nightmare. He's only 6'2". He plays a little taller than 6'2" when he needs to. He can play a little shorter than 6'2" when he needs to. But what sets him apart is he's one of the few guys in high school basketball that can take a game over. You saw it in the third quarter of the championship game when he scored 6 consecutive field goals to really drive his team out in front to a safe lead that ended up winning the title for rugby.
Yeah, and you certainly have to pass your congratulations along to Brad and his team. So close to that perfect season a year ago. Yeah. Getting back to the game when they weren't overall maybe as good as they were a year ago.
They had one goal.
But getting hot at the end, playing their best basketball of the season in the tournament, and ending that long title drought. Since 1962 it had been since they had won a state basketball title at rugby. All right, let's turn our attention to the girls now. There are some great career totals in this group, Jason. Safe to say the seniors on this list are going to be greatly missed by their respective programs.
Yes, there are some names I think will go down in kind of that all-time great category, and a couple of them. Hannah Stewart of Bishop Ryan. She's done it for 4 years consistently, has played actually a little bit more than those 4 years, but just consistently all over the court. Fallon Freege, she's going on to the University of North Dakota, has put up some huge career numbers herself. And don't forget about Gabby Bowl. I mean, she's been in a little bit in that shadow of Hannah Stewart, but she is the leading scorer from that team when she was a senior. And then Riley Nudell is a junior, and Shais Marks a junior. Marks, an unbelievable rebounder for Thompson, who's been consistently that second tier, that second or third best team in the state. And then Nudell has just signed to play, or verbal to play with North Dakota State. So a lot of talent still coming up, but we'll really miss those top 3 seniors.
Absolutely. And Hannah Stewart, no real surprise here, the player of the year for Varsity Sports Class B girls basketball in North Dakota. And her numbers just gaudy. Everything jumps off the page. And you throw in her career numbers to boot. I mean, it's just what an impressive career she has had.
It is. It's impressive everywhere from leadership to her offensive skills on the low post, her passing skills on the high post, to what she can do on defense. And I think this maybe gets overlooked a little bit when you look at the stats, but what she does on defense is change the game. Look at her blocks per game, 4.3 blocks per game. And trust me, offenses were not going at Hannah Stewart. She found a way to not only block shots, but to really rearrange the way offenses tried to attack Bishop Ryan. Add on 5.7 steals per game. And defensively, she was just as strong as she was offensively, and we all know how good she was offensively.
Well, I mean, we talked at length here about the quality group of seniors that's leaving Class B girls basketball, but there's no shortage of talent here. You see Nudell, you see Marks. Not a bad group to pick up the torch and try to carry it off.
Yes, Class B will be filled with some great stars coming up. These are just a couple of them, and there's a lot more that are just getting better and better.
Absolutely. Well, congratulations to all of our North Dakota honorees here on Varsity Sports. But we've got 3 more classes to crown. We're going to hand out our first pieces of South Dakota hardware when we come back.
Varsity Sports on Midco Sports Network is presented by AE Tech Electrical Training Center in Rapid City. Varsity Sports on Midco Sports Network is presented by Shields.
And welcome back to Varsity Sports. Well, Class AA is always competitive in South Dakota. The talent level certainly always featuring some of the best in the state. This year, of course, was no different. Lots of stars shine bright, Jason. But let's take a look now at the group that burned brightest on the boys' side, Class AA in South Dakota.
A tough task here. As you said, always a great amount of talent. This year, obviously, no different. And you look from top to bottom. You got players like Dangu, who just could bounce off the floor and flush it from anywhere down low, and he obviously was great. Addison Park, his numbers just as good, or actually a little bit better in some areas. And two guys at West River who had even better numbers. Sometimes if you just blindfolded the names from the numbers, you wouldn't realize a guy like Sam McLeod was a 20 and 10 type of guy. And Kellen Barden actually averaged 21 points per game and 11 rebounds per game. Guys we don't talk about quite as much because their teams didn't do quite as well. And then some just outstanding shooters in Nate Davis, Braxton Elliott, a great group of guys here. I didn't throw on Caleb Johnson just because he didn't play the whole season. Maybe his numbers weren't quite as good, but talent-wise, he might belong in this list as well.
You look at Braxton Elliott, just to mention him real quickly, what a tournament he had for Sioux Falls O'Gorman.
There are certain guys that can flip that switch and go to that extra gear. He is definitely one of them.
In terms of the player of the year, though, I think I know where you're going. Dangu, Sioux Falls, Washington.
Yep, he also was the Gatorade Player of the Year. And trust me, this was a tough decision. Earlier in the year, I watched Sam McLeod play, and I thought he might be the Player of the Year. Down the stretch, you saw what Addison Park did, and I thought maybe he was the Player of the Year. And then, after talking to coaches, after seeing what I saw with my own eyes, there is nobody like Dangu who can change a game. Again, defensively, the way he can alter shots. Offensively, the way he can electrify not only your own team, but electrify an entire gym with one of his jams. Yeah. And his trademark is his quick first step. Nobody is as quick off the bounce as Dangu. Nobody can get around a defender like Dangu, and I think he will eventually, you'll see at the Summit League level, nobody has the talent that Dangu has.
Yeah, North Dakota State got a good one right there. Minnesota State Moorhead got a good one in Addison Park.
Yep.
But certainly a lot of these guys, certainly you could see them playing at some level of college basketball. Some haven't made their decisions yet, but certainly a talented group of young guys here. Dangu, though, our player of the year in Class AA in South Dakota boys basketball. How about the girls' side now? We were blessed with a big load of D1 talent this year, probably as big in any one class that we've ever seen, at least in recent memory.
A lot of great players, and you have to start with maybe Tagan Larson. She didn't play the entire season, had to sit out the first 6 weeks or so. Had she played the whole season, I mean, it would be hard to argue any player was as good as she was, with almost 20 points per game, 9 rebounds a game, 3.5 blocks per game, an efficient shooter from both the field and from beyond the arc. You got great players like Ellie Brecht, who really brought her game up, led her team in points, in rebounds, in three-pointers. Anna Brecht, the sophomore, she really came onto the scene in a big way, 15 points per game, and she didn't get a load of the shots. Wait till she gets a little bit more looks next year. She's going to be one of the best players in the state. Jessica Mara shot 60% from the field while just keeping that team steady all season, not having a loss until, of course, their title game that they played, or actually they lost one regular season game and one in the title game. And then a player like Danny Honor, who doesn't get a lot of respect out of Harrisburg, led that team as a senior. And Taylor Valesky, without Macy Miller, quietly averaged 19.5 points per game. A lot of great players in this field.
Yeah, I mean, just you mentioned the D1 talent. You've got Iowa, Nebraska, Omaha, South Dakota State all represented there. It's a pretty impressive group, certainly on the girls' side. Another South Dakota State Jackrabbit, or a future one, maybe now a SDSU player, I guess you could consider her, but your player of the year in AA girls, Sydney Palmer from Fear.
Had another tough decision. Had to go with Sydney Palmer. She does everything well on the court. What separates her from the rest of the group? I think it's just her strength. She is so strong out there that she can create her own shot. She can go out and get the rebound, and she is so smart. So when you have that combination of smarts and that athletic ability that she does, it's hard to compete with. And she showed it on the court, 19.3 points per game, almost 7 boards a game. She can dish it with a couple assists per game and 2.5 steals per game. And she probably had not that great of talent-wise of a supporting cast as some of these other teams, but team-wise, she elevated the rest of her team to a top 5 type of year.
All right, again, our players of the year in South Dakota Class AA basketball, Dangu from Sioux Falls, Washington, and Sydney Palmer from Pierre. Well, Aberdeen Roncalli took home the team trophy at the South Dakota State A Boys Tournament, but would they be able to complete our version of the postseason sweep? We'll name our Class A Players of the Year next.
Varsity Sports on Midco Sports Network is presented by AE Tech Electrical Training Center in Rapid City. Varsity Sports on Midco Sports Network is presented by Shields.
And welcome back. Well, Class A has developed a reputation in South Dakota boys basketball as being the class with the most parity, Jason. And based on the list of Varsity Sports honorees, it's pretty easy to see why. If you were starting a team, I think you'd be just fine taking any one of this group.
Yeah, this group, and again, it's so hard to just make this group, but these guys are pretty interchangeable. This was the hardest group for me to pick a player of the year, and you see all of the worthy candidates. Nathaniel Brownville, the 7-1 player out of Little Wound, who averaged almost a triple-double because of his 8 blocks per game. Braden McNary, a great year, had a streak during the season where he was getting 20 points and 10 boards game after game. Creighton LeBeau out of Cheyenne Eagle Butte, over 20 points a game. Ty Hoagland, the only junior on this group, almost at 20 points per game. And then Brendan Harder out of Winter. He put up numbers very similar to what we saw out of Zach Horseman in Winter just a few years ago.
Well, you mentioned just how close this group was and how tough the decision was. In the end, there was one underclassman on the list, and that was Ty Hoagland from Bell Rapids, and he gets the nod.
Yeah, you put him in a gym, and he can meld into any team because he's such a good pure shooter, and he can also drive it to the rack, and that's why he averaged 19.4 points per game, and that's why he drove his team all the way to the finals. 42 three-point field goals on the year, the 2 steals a game. He can also dish the ball. This guy has a very bright future next year as a great player, but just in his junior year, I mean, the year was unbelievable.
Ty Hoagland, the Varsity Sports Player of the Year in Class A boys basketball in South Dakota. On the girls' side, Jason, not many, if any at all, were questioning who the top team in this class was. St. Thomas More has certainly earned that favorite label over the past few seasons, but in your mind, was the race for Class A's top player any closer at all?
No, not really. This was Alexis Swedlin's award, and she proved it, though. She had to go up and put the numbers up to back that up, and she did. 25 points per game, 6.5 rebounds per game, and what she did on defense was really step her game up. She could take any player in this class one-on-one and help shut them down. So she definitely belongs on this list. But let's talk about the rest of the group. I mean, you've got a freshman, Morgan Kepsel, out of McCook Central Montrose, who had a great season, the 6-footer. We're going to hear a lot more from great players like what Mackenzie Menenga did, leading her team all the way to the finals at almost 20 points per game. And Megan Boltzma out of Mount Vernon Plankinton maybe didn't put up a huge tournament, but throughout the season, I mean, she is a force to be dealt with, and soon she's got one more year in high school, but will be playing with SDSU, and you can easily see why. A great player.
Well, I mean, and just as we talk a little bit more about Swedlin here, I mean, just to qualify just how good her numbers are and how good she is as a player, I mean, coaches tend to talk highly about any recruit that they're bringing in. But when we had Washington State's coach on, she was glowing about the opportunity to have a player like Alexis Swedlin, and not only that, but to get her in and put her in the rotation immediately and have her impact the game.
Exactly. She mentioned that she was looking to Swedlin to replace their top scorer, who's a senior this year at Washington State, and thinks that Swedlin can step right in and fill that void. You almost get branded with pure shooter too quickly. She's a great all-around player, but she definitely is a pure shooter.
She is a shooter, that's for sure. All right, well, we've got one more batch of postseason awards to hand out. We're going to do that and wrap up our coverage of high school basketball for the 2014-15 season right after this.
Varsity Sports on Midco Sports Network is presented by AE Tech Electrical Training Center in Rapid City. Varsity Sports on Midco Sports Network is presented by Shields.
And welcome back. It is time now to complete our coverage of high school basketball for the 2014-15 season. Jason, can't believe I'm saying that, but we've got 2 classes left. Class B, boys and girls in the state of South Dakota. Another impressive group here. They've all been impressive, but a couple of players here really pop off the page when you look statistically left to right.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about Bo Freeze on this show. He's done such a great job over his career, always being one of the top players on one of the top teams in the state at Langford. And Lorenzo Williams, we've talked a lot about this year as well, averaging 25 points per game. A couple of guys we don't talk quite as much about. Heath Schindler out of Elkton Lake Benton averaged 27 points per game, almost 8 boards a game, and was able to dish the rock at almost 5 assists per game. The combination you just do not see very often. And then you talk about a guy like Bo Keeter out of Miller. Doesn't get a lot of recognition. His team didn't have a great year, but was a steady 20-point-a-game guy. Zach O'Keefe might be one of the quickest guys I've ever seen play in person out of Parker. Made that team go. Reed Harder, a great pure shooter out of Cologne. He's a junior. He'll be back next year. And then Jordan Marquardt, a 20-point-a-game guy who led his team all the way to the title.
As you look at the numbers, it seems to me Williams, Schindler were the two top performers statistically, but which one was the guy?
Oh, it was tough. I was leaning towards Lorenzo Williams most of the year. Schindler came on strong, but I still had to stay with Lorenzo Williams. He led his team to an undefeated regular season. Didn't quite put up the numbers he wanted to at the state tournament, but trust me, he's got all the tools you need, and what set him apart is the way he can drive to the hoop. We all know he can do that, but he added that jump shot this year, made him unstoppable.
Not a bad year, led by Lorenzo Williams for Woolsey Wessington. They got to the Dome in football. They got to the state tournament in basketball. Quite an impressive feat. Now, girls Class B in South Dakota. Let's take a look at this list.
Great group of some great seniors that you see on the list there. Darby Gustafson had a great year, led her team to a title, but the sophomores is what I want to talk about. Chloe Lamb, Raquel Winchus, Maya Selland, all sophomores. You see Shannon O'Malley, a freshman. A lot to look forward to in this class.
Yeah, I think this class obviously going to be loaded for quite some time. A lot of these girls have 2, even 3 years left. But who's the player of the year for this year?
This year, it was sophomore Maya Selland, already over 1,000 points for her career, averaged a double-double, 21 points, 10 rebounds, and also set a record for most assists per game in school history. So points, rebounds, and assists. She set all those records as a sophomore.
All right, well, that's going to do it, Jason. Coverage of high school basketball here at Varsity Sports is complete. Certainly want to send out our congratulations once again to all the state champions in North and South Dakota, and of course our Varsity Sports individual honorees from tonight. Great job on a great season. Thanks for watching.